Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to explore how to become truly indistractable in a world overflowing with tech temptations. Our guide for this is the book Indistractable, How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. Now, this book isn't just another self-help fad, though. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella recommended it. So, it's got to have some serious insights.
What's intriguing is it doesn't just offer surface-level hacks. It really dives deep into the psychology of why we get distracted and kind of helps us shift our mindset to regain control.
Right. And the author, Nir Eyal, has some serious street cred in the tech world.
Yeah.
He's a former Stanford GSB instructor and an expert in how products are designed to be habit-forming. He even wrote a whole other bestseller on that.
Really?
But with Indistractable, he's on our side, helping us break free.
One of the most valuable takeaways, I think, is how the book busts some myths about willpower. You'll discover surprisingly effective techniques that actually work and that top performers use.
Get ready for some aha moments, because this deep dive is all about giving you practical, actionable strategies to become more indistractable.
Awesome.
We're talking about real mindset shifts, not just temporary hacks.
So the first thing we need to understand is that distraction isn't just about resisting the siren call of your phone or social media. It goes much deeper than that.
Right.
It's about understanding why we get pulled away from the things we want to focus on.
Eyal starts the book with a personal story that really resonates.
Okay.
He talks about missing a special moment with his daughter because he was glued to his phone. It's that classic feeling of prioritizing distractions over the people we love.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there at some point, haven't we?
Absolutely. And that story highlights a core concept. All human behavior, including distraction, stems from a desire to escape discomfort.
Interesting.
So think about it. Managing your time is like managing your discomfort. We aren't always seeking pleasure, as much as we're trying to avoid even subtle feelings of unease.
Okay, so how do we apply that to everyday life?
He uses this fascinating analogy of a pool table to explain the difference between what triggers distraction and what's really driving it. Imagine watching a game of pool. You see the cue ball hit the colored balls, and they scatter. You might think that collision is the cause of the movement. But of course, the real cause is the player who planned that shot.
So if we apply that to our lives, it's easy to blame things like technology or our environment for our distraction. Those are just the things we see on the surface.
Exactly. The real driver, the player behind the shot, is internal triggers. It's the discomfort we feel inside that we're trying to escape.
So we need to get better at recognizing those internal triggers.
Yeah.
What are some of the big ones that Eyal talks about?
He outlines 4 key psychological factors that make us naturally prone to distraction. Let's start with the most obvious one, boredom. If our ancestors were content just sitting around, they wouldn't have gone out to hunt or explore new territories. So that inner drive to avoid boredom is hardwired into us.
But that same drive can lead us down the rabbit hole of endless scrolling on our phones these days.
Right.
It's not exactly helping us evolve.
Exactly. Then there's negativity bias.
Which
is our tendency to focus more on negative things than positive ones. It's that old fight or flight instinct kicking in. Our brains are wired to pay attention to potential threats, which helped us survive in the past.
I guess back in the day, it was more useful to spot a saber-toothed tiger than to admire a pretty sunset.
Right. But now, instead of saber-toothed tigers, we're bombarded with negative news, stressful emails, and those not-so-nice comments on social media. No wonder we get distracted.
And when we get stuck in those negative thought loops, that's what Eyal calls rumination.
Exactly. Rumination is exhausting. Replaying past mistakes, worrying about the future, and that negative self-talk. It's a recipe for distraction. We seek out anything to escape those thoughts.
And then we have what he calls hedonic adaptation. Which is basically getting used to good things really fast and always craving more. It's like that feeling of, I just got a new phone, but I already want the next model.
It's a classic case of the grass is always greener. We get a little hit of satisfaction, then quickly adapt and need another hit. So we end up on this treadmill of constantly seeking the next thing. And of course, that leads to more distraction.
Well, you're telling me we have these internal triggers, boredom, negativity bias, rumination, and hedonic adaptation.
Exactly.
It sounds like we're practically programmed to get distracted. How do we break free from this cycle?
That's where Eyal's Indistractable model comes in.
Okay.
And that's what we'll dive into next.
This
model gives us a framework, a set of steps to understand and manage these triggers.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping for. So, for everyone listening, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll unpack Eyal's Indistractable model and start turning these insights into action.
Yes.
It's time to reclaim your focus.
Awesome.
Okay, we're back and ready to dive into Nir Eyal's Indistractable model.
Okay.
This is where we take those aha moments from part 1 and turn them into action. So you ready to become the master of your own attention.
Absolutely. And the beauty of this model is that it's not about becoming a tech-hating hermit.
Right.
It's about using technology in a way that aligns with your values and helps you achieve your goals.
I love that. So remind us, what's the first step in this model?
Step 1 is mastering internal triggers.
Okay.
Remember those uncomfortable feelings we talked about, like boredom and negativity bias? Instead of trying to fight those feelings, we need to understand them. Eyal talks about a technique called leaves on a stream.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. What's that all about?
Imagine yourself sitting by a stream, watching leaves float by. Each leaf represents a thought or feeling that pops up. Instead of getting caught up in those thoughts or trying to push them away, you simply observe them without judgment and let them pass.
It sounds like a mindfulness exercise, almost like meditation.
Right.
So instead of getting swept away by those thoughts, you're just acknowledging them and letting them go. I can see how that could be really powerful.
It's about creating that space between the feeling and your reaction. And it's a great way to start managing those internal triggers instead of letting them control you.
Okay, so we're getting better at handling those internal triggers. What's next?
Step 2 is all about making time for traction. You can't call something a distraction unless you know what it's distracting you from, right?
Right.
So this step is about getting really clear on your values and priorities.
And this is where the idea of time boxing comes in, right? Maybe you can explain that for those of us who aren't familiar.
Time boxing is about scheduling blocks of time for specific activities. Instead of letting your day be dictated by whatever pops up in your inbox or on your social media feed, you're proactively deciding how you want to spend your time. It's about taking control of your schedule instead of letting your schedule control you.
So it's like creating a budget for your time.
Exactly.
For allocating your hours and minutes to the things that are most important to you.
Exactly. Eyal even shares his personal schedule as an example in the book.
Okay.
Including his fun jar tradition with his daughter.
Oh, wow.
Where they write down fun activities and then pick one out of the jar each week. It's about being intentional with your time, even for the fun stuff.
I love that. And he also talks about the importance of syncing your schedule with the people you work with.
Yes.
It's not just about creating a personal schedule.
Right.
It's about communicating your priorities and minimizing interruptions.
That's right. He uses the example of April,
okay,
an advertising executive who is constantly being pulled in different directions.
Yeah.
When she started time boxing and syncing her schedule with her manager, she was able to focus better, get more done, and even reclaim some of her evenings.
That's a win-win.
Right, right.
More productivity and more time for yourself.
Right.
Okay, so we're managing internal triggers and making time for traction. What's step 3 all about?
Step 3 is where we get tactical.
Okay.
It's about hacking back external triggers. These are all the things in our environment that pull for our attention.
Yeah.
And Eyal gives some really practical tips and strategies here.
Okay, so like what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, one simple but effective strategy is having a clear signal to let others know you don't want to be interrupted. He talks about the study where nurses in a hospital started wearing bright orange vests that said, "Do not interrupt," while they were preparing medications.
Interesting.
It seems simple,
Huh.
but it significantly reduced medication errors.
That's amazing. So just a simple visual cue can make a big difference.
Exactly.
What about all those digital distractions?
Right.
You know, the emails, the group chats, the social media notifications. Yeah.
Never ending.
Right. He has some great tips for those too. For email, he suggests setting up office hours. So you're not constantly checking and responding throughout the day. And he emphasizes the importance of batch processing emails. It's much more efficient to dedicate specific blocks of time to dealing with email rather than checking it every few minutes.
Right.
And for group chats, he has 3 simple rules. Schedule it.
Okay.
Be picky about which ones you join and get in and get out.
Yeah.
Don't let them become a constant drain on your attention.
I love those rules. I need to implement those immediately. What about reclaiming our phones? Any tips for that?
Absolutely. Eyal suggests removing distracting apps from your home screen, rearranging the apps you do keep to minimize temptation, and customizing your notification settings. And the great thing is, most phones now have built-in tools for this, like do not disturb modes and app limits.
That's good to know. So we're becoming more aware of our internal triggers. We're making time for traction.
And we're hacking back external triggers.
Yes.
This is starting to feel really empowering. What's the final step in the Indistractable model?
So the fourth step is all about preventing distraction with packs.
Okay, so we're talking about setting up some guardrails to keep ourselves on track. I like it. Tell me more about these packs.
Okay, so Eyal talks about two main types.
Okay.
Effort packs and price packs.
Okay.
An effort pact makes the unwanted behavior like checking your phone every 5 minutes more difficult.
So, for example, you could use an app that blocks distracting websites for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Or you could physically put your phone in another room while you're working.
Exactly. He even talks about using a concentration crown.
A concentration crown.
It's literally a crown with LEDs that light up when he needs uninterrupted time.
Wow.
And he's not afraid to get creative. He made a $10,000 bet with a friend to finish his book.
$10,000.
Yeah, that's some serious commitment.
Wow. That's definitely putting your money where your mouth is. I can see how that kind of price pact would be really motivating. But isn't there a risk of feeling too restricted? Like, what if you actually need to check your phone for something important?
That's a great question. And Eyal addresses that too. He's not saying you need to become a tech hermit. It's about finding the right balance. And part of that is being really clear about your values and priorities. That leads us to the idea of identity packs.
Okay.
Which are about aligning your actions with who you want to be.
So it's about saying, I'm the kind of person who values focus and gets things done.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious decision to become indistractable and then acting in ways that support that identity.
Okay, so we've got these 4 powerful steps. Mastering internal triggers, making time for traction, hacking back external triggers, and preventing distraction with packs. It feels like a comprehensive toolkit for taking back control of our attention.
It is. But there's one more important piece of this puzzle that I think we should touch on, and that's the role of technology in our relationships.
Right, because let's be real, technology can be a major distraction in our relationships, even when we don't intend it to be.
You know, Eyal gets really personal in the book and shares his own struggle with what he calls techno-infidelity.
Techno-infidelity.
He talks about how he and his wife were constantly on their devices, even when they were supposed to be spending quality time together.
Yeah, it's something we can all relate to, right? It's so easy to get sucked into those screens, even when the most important people in our lives are right there in front of us.
And it can create a real distance in those relationships.
So what did Eyal and his wife do to overcome this?
Well, they applied the principles of the Indistractable model to their relationship. They started by removing their phones from the bedroom.
Creating that tech-free sanctuary. I like it.
Right. And they implemented the 10-minute rule.
Okay.
If they felt the urge to check their devices in the evening, they would wait 10 minutes before doing so. It gave them time to pause, reflect, and often the urge would pass.
That's such a simple but powerful technique. It's about breaking that automatic habit of reaching for your phone without even thinking about it.
Exactly. And they even took things a step further and used outlet timers to enforce a tech curfew. They literally unplugged their devices at a certain time each night.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right.
But it sounds like it really worked for them. They were able to reclaim those evening hours and connect with each other on a deeper level. And that's what it's all about, right? Being present with the people we care about, even in a world full of distractions.
Absolutely. And the great thing is that these same principles can apply to our interactions with friends and family, too. It's about setting boundaries, being mindful, and prioritizing those real-life connections.
You know, listening to all of this, I'm struck by how much of this is about mindset. It's not just about the tools and techniques. It's about making a conscious decision to become indistractable and then aligning your actions with that decision.
I completely agree. It's about shifting your perspective from feeling like a victim of distraction to feeling empowered to take control. Remember Eyal's point. Distraction is a symptom of a deeper problem.
Right. So if you're constantly getting distracted, instead of beating yourself up, ask yourself, what am I trying to escape?
Right.
What discomfort am I trying to avoid? That's such a profound insight.
It is. And once you identify that root cause,
yeah,
you can start to address it in a more meaningful way.
So for everyone listening, here's the takeaway. Becoming indistractable is not a one-time fix.
Right.
It's an ongoing process. It's about being aware of your triggers, setting boundaries, and making conscious choices that align with your values.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey. We all struggle with distraction in this hyper-connected world.
This deep dive has given you some powerful tools and techniques to start taking back control of your attention, but the real work starts now.
It does.
It's time to put these insights into action and start creating a life where you're truly present, engaged, and fulfilled. If you're ready to dive even deeper, we highly recommend checking out the full book, Indistractable. It's packed with even more practical advice and inspiring stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay focused, and keep diving deep.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.